In the words of the legendary Lou Gellerman, hello, dog fans, and welcome to the Sound the Siren podcast, because everything matters, including the University of Washington has officially hit the big time. We are officially a member of the Big Ten Conference. Big Ten athletics have started. First game on the docket was a UW women's soccer game. But even more importantly than the big time, or equally as important as the big time, it's time to Doog, and it's time to Doognosticate. As usual, I'm your host, Hooligan7. I'm on Twitter at Hooligan7_STSUW. I am joined tonight by Johnny Tugs, DJ K Woody, Hood Husky, and signed on as definitely plastered, but it's our long lost DawgProcess. How are you gentlemen all doing tonight? It's good to see some of you that it's been a minute.
I'm good.
Yearly or appearance. Hashtag yearly.
Yeah. Or not see, but at least hear from you, DP, given some technical difficulties. But welcome back. It wouldn't be a Doognostication episode without you.
Oh, thank you.
So before we dig into the substance of the episode, I do want to mention we are, of course, on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Sound the Siren UW. Please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to our show. If you're listening via audio format, if you're watching on YouTube, please like this video and hit that subscribe button to get notified when we post new content. If you are a fan of Sound the Siren and you appreciate the work that we do and the humor that we bring, you're certainly welcome to support us at podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/Sound the Siren pod UW/support, which will be linked on the screen. We do have 3 subscription tiers. At the 99 cents a month tier, you will get a thank you and shout out on the show, and we will send you one of these shiny new Sound the Siren stickers featuring our new logo. At the $4.99 a month subscription tier, and we got to shout out our buddy Pie God who supports us at this level. We would be happy to have you on for a happy hour episode once a quarter, as well as receiving that on-show thank you and one of these bad boy stickers. And then at the final tier, at the $9.99 a month subscription tier, you will get to choose you get to choose which of our ongoing segments that you'd like to sponsor, as well as the happy hour sticker, and the sticker. Sound the Siren is also a proud inaugural member of the College Huddle, available at collegehuddle.com and on Twitter at College Huddle. But without further ado, we're now free to move into the beverages of the evening. Tugs, I know I can rely on you to be partaking when we do. What do you got tonight, buddy?
Always. I'm drinking a Reuben's Pacific Northwest Crush. It's absolutely excellent.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Very good.
Damn, that sounds amazing.
Dude,
nice.
It's really good.
DP, since we know that it's you've graduated from Minute Maid, what you got, bud?
Yeah, we have the big boy Minute Maid now. This is the June Shine, no added sugar, 8% margaritas that you can find at Trader Joe's. It's mediocre.
Okay, I was like, ooh.
I'll just say that.
Okay,
they make some decent stuff.
I retract that. Ooh.
This is not one of those things. But you got to do what you got to do if you want to find no added sugar.
Oh man, I obviously got the
Hood,
water
got
on
tonight,
deck,
pal?
but you know what I'm saying. When in Rome, do as the Romans. You know, I got Negra Modelo, like I always have, man. You know what I'm saying. If I don't have water, I got my Negra Modelo. So.
Nice. And DJ.
Shit, my wife just got back from Trader Joe's, and so she brought me home some ice cream. I'm eating that right now. Then I might get a claw after this though.
Bruh, what? What flavor is it, bro? You gotta tell me the flavor, bro.
Yeah, and
if you say vanilla, we got a problem. Okay, that's not okay. I was about to judge you, bro.
No, it's cookie dough. Yeah.
It is.
No, vanilla's good though. I mean,
there's a cookie dough White Claw?
No, ice cream.
Oh sorry.
Wait.
Yeah.
I'm like, Broke my brain.
That don't sound good.
You already hated cause enough.
Blame the beverage. I'm starting the evening with a Russian River Brewing Company Pliny the Elder. Yes, DJ, it's kind of hoppy, so not necessarily your cup of tea or glass of beer. But in honor of our quarterback, if I move on to a second beverage this evening, I have a Stoop Brewing Sky Cowboy Hazy IPA. So, Will Rogers, who's named similarly to a famous Hollywood cowboy, and Will Rogers is going to do some business through this guy this year, so I thought it was an appropriate second beverage for a Doognostication episode. I haven't tried that one yet, but the Pliny the Elder is very, very good. So we've now done beverages. It is, of course, time for the infamous stupid tweets. Anybody got anything? Hood, I know you got some business cooking today in the stupid tweets department.
I think one of y'all are probably going to bring the other one up.
Press conferences.
Just to, I tried really hard. This was the first off season where I really tried to give the benefit of the doubt to like CFB Media, because it's been a long time since I've like subscribed or even give them the benefit of the doubt and listen to them or take heed to anything they got to say. So I tried again. Was recommended the Cover 3 podcast. So they had two parts where they kind of did predictions on, the Big Ten. I didn't see the first part, but I saw the part where they did Washington predictions, and just a little, some footnotes, some cliff notes. Bud Elliott mentioned us in like the bottom four as like arguably the worst team, the worst roster in the conference, and like lined us up with UCLA. So. And then when you engage with him, he mentioned that he hadn't really, paid attention since the spring. So, like, it's just like, but what are you doing? So I felt like that was, stupid for sure, for segment purposes. But it's just par for the course at this point. You know what I'm saying? So the disrespect seems intentional. They scoff at things that, that aren't easy to gain clicks and clickbait and engagement. So it just is what it is. We don't play that engagement clickbait game. So. They don't pander to us.
Yeah. I mean, there's stupid tweets, of course, from the usual suspects. I mean, there's constantly backs and forth. And I will, we got to say, like, Kisos, I think, tried to call us out a couple of weeks ago for like, hey, why aren't you guys talking positively about the season? I'm like, are you not? Like, we are. Like if you miss us that much, just say
Please,
so. Like, Duck fans, like.
Yeah.
And yeah, that wasn't just a stupid tweet. That was a stupid ass thread. Like everything they were saying, all the responses by those guys were just ridiculous. Especially Bud Elliott. Like his was the worst about the spring. Yeah, Tom was okay, but yeah.
Actually, I think we need to call out a kind of more of a stupid trend from a national media perspective, and it's not just specific to Washington. But I am so tired of the returning starters. I mean, yes, it's a narrative about Washington, but it's a narrative about every team across the country about returning starters and returning production. Number one, returning starters. I mean, like, yes, we don't return Eddie Ulofoshio, but we do return arguably probably our overall best linebacker from last year in Carson Bruner, and arguably our second most productive in Zoe Tup. That, and when you look at Washington as an example specifically, we have returning starters for this coaching staff. They played at another school, but they played for this coaching staff in this system. So shouts to, like, I'll call out, I'm sure, Indiana, it's getting mentioned in the national magazines or, national coverage of Indiana. I don't know how much they're counting all of the players that Kurt Cignetti brought from James Madison that played for him in the system. Granted, it's a different level, but this isn't 1984 where it's returning starters and guys that were in your program and are moving up to replace your departed players. Like, this is a new era. Like, there's got to be a different way to measure talent and expected production than just, hey, they lost 21 and 22 starters from the national championship game, because it also, in our case, it ignores the fact that
Kellis Dean started some games. Like, what? Drew Fowler
Landon Hatchett played, like when people went down early in
played better than
games,
he
they
did.
literally played the whole games. Like,
and the other one that's my favorite is like, yeah, Washington's got some big questions at wide receiver and they lost. We lost 3 top 100 NFL draft
really
choices.
fucking good, bro.
Maybe the reason we don't have a ton of returning production at receiver
But
is
then
because those guys are really fucking good.
People don't mention wide receivers when they're talking about wins and losses with Penn State. They almost go, well, I mean, I guess they just probably don't need receivers. They'll just lean on the run, but it's dismissive then. But it matters so much over here. It's just such this like moving of the needle. It is what it is, bruh.
It's like Pac-12 officials have gone into the media. Inconsistency.
All right, I got another one. Because I was gonna use the one from Bud Elliott, but I got another one from I don't know if you guys know him. You should. You don't, but Go Ducks or Geox, or however you spell it. But I know how to say the word, but
It's Go.
G-A-U-X Ducks. Yeah, I know it's Go. But anyways, he says Bo Nix is playing football and Michael Penix is on the bench. What's new? And I know this dude's a troll. I know him because I've been in some group chats with him, but he's still an idiot, and he's always posting stupid shit like this, trying to clickbait. And like, what do you mean? I don't get what he means by what's new though, because Penix has been starting for years. But he said a few things today. That was just one of them.
Bo Nix preseason debut, 21 attempts, 125 yards. What's new?
Yeah, for real.
Taking down like a champ.
Man,
check down.
But shouts to their best receiver in decades that got passed in camp by a 7th rounder
all
from Utah.
All off the strength of like effort and buy-in.
That's wild.
Like you're just not a good like. You might be a good football player, but you're not a football player. So it's funny, man. I know y'all probably got a bunch more stupid tweets. I got a couple. I was like, oh shoot, I finally, but.
Didn't Ryan Snell say something super dumb like a couple days ago? I'm on my phone.
That's every day.
That's all day, every day. Like,
he's not a troll. That's just how he is.
We honestly might need to disqualify Ryan from future mention on this because it would just be we'd have to do a separate segment just for Ryan.
Yeah, we just need to post his account, his Twitter account name on this in the background, and just leave it at that.
Ryan and at Big Game Boomer, both of them.
Yep.
Y'all see the tweet of that like the program aficionado dude where he thought he was trolling us, or thought he was trolling Wilbur. Like Wilbur was like, the Bo Nix story isn't about Oregon doing something well; it's about Auburn failing spectacularly. And then program aficionado quoted it and said, Washington's 2023 season isn't about Kalen DeBoer doing something well; it's about Chris Peterson building something well. And he thought he was trolling, but it's like, you're right, bro. Like, you thought it was a troll, bro.
Yep, I saw that.
I thought that was hilarious.
The other thing, the other ones that I will call out a couple more that I just love is like it happened a few weeks ago and I didn't save it, but like, oh wait, people asking like, because we're excited about recruiting now. Everybody's like, oh, does recruiting matter again? And I'm like, it always mattered, but coaching and development also matter. That was our whole stinking point. Yep. And anybody that is thinking that Washington is going to be TCU Part 2, either this year or going forward, again, I said this on our last episode, but did it hurt to lose Andrew Marsh to Michigan? That, we'll just see about that one, because one offense is definitely a little more proven in terms of receiving game production than the other. But Jedd Fisch is putting together a class comparable to Chris Peterson's best classes, and he's doing it in his first full cycle. Oh, and by the way, this is a coaching staff that took Arizona from, in their first year, 1-11 to 10 wins. So that coaching and development thing. Yeah. And the other one I love is related, and the On3 guys, or the Cover 3 idiots, mentioned it again. It's like, yeah, and he's going to go to Florida. And I'm like, and you know what Washington gets if Jedd Fisch goes to Florida? Number one, Washington if Jedd Fisch gets the Florida job, it means that we will have had probably a fairly successful and winning season, because they're not going to hire him if he goes 5-7. And number two, the University of Washington gets $10 million. And I will reiterate, as I've said in group chats, Washington's last 3 external hires: Chris Peterson, Kalen DeBoer, Jedd Fisch. Clearly a program and a department not serious about football.
I was saying,
Hood, you're muted.
I was just saying, like,
you got your
are we
mute
tripping?
On.
Are we tripping for
I know you're
saying, like,
reacting.
we I ain't got no problem. I ain't got no problem with our track record of hiring people. So don't they have to pay $20 million? Don't they have to pay $20 million to fire Billy Napier?
Todd Turner's not in charge anymore.
Something like that. Like, it don't even make sense. Brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not going to have a winning record because their
Doesn't
schedule
even
is
logistically
It's
make
gonna be
sense
bad.
for him to go to Florida.
He's
I think
gone
that's his alma
after this
mater.
year.
But
There's no way.
he's at least going to be here 2-3 years to see something and then be bouncing, just because the opportunities aren't really there. If you look at the SEC openings potentially, if you look at any of the Big Ten openings potentially, there's no school that's like better than Washington that's having like some foreseeable opening. Like you look at Michigan State, like Purdue.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if Florida was that big a priority, he had to be looking. I mean, like, he's going to make more hay he would have made more hay in terms of getting a top tier job, staying at Arizona and riding the wave of the talent they had on the way up, than taking the Washington job.
Yep,
Taking
exactly.
the Washington job would have been a 1 year, hey, I'm going to make 3 or 4 more million this year than I would there. Yeah, I'm not saying Jed's here forever. I don't expect him to be.
No, he won't
But
be.
again, even if he leaves after this season, we got $10 million to go spend on somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say 2 things like this. I mean, you can argue Sark even was a good hire, especially at the time. So that's 4.
Yeah.
But then with Jed,
But he's not in the same. He's not in the same class
he's not. No, he's definitely
or
not.
Sark at Washington, and
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Sark
Sark was hydrophobic, so he had a problem. But
yeah,
non-hydrophobic Sark definitely up there.
yeah, for sure. But then going back to Jed, and I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like he wants to get to the NFL, be an NFL head coach. And so why would he go be here for year or 2, go to Florida and like do like a mini rebuild there for a couple years?
Massive rebuild.
Yeah, and I get that's his alma mater, but that just doesn't make sense for him.
Massive.
Yeah.
Massive. Because they are at best 5th or 6th in the SEC pecking order right now.
Yeah.
Washington, like, if you look at the Big Ten, and we're going to dive into this a little more of the substance of the Big Ten this year. Right now, to me, there are 2 teams that are clearly, on paper, markedly better than every other program in this conference. But even they have a few questions. After that, it gets really, really muddled and like, it's Ohio State and Oregon, and then a big mush in the middle of it. Could be Iowa, it could be USC, it could be Penn State, it could be Washington, it could be Rutgers, it could be, but all of those programs have question marks. Can Iowa offense? At some point, they're going to have to. And the other thing, and this is going to come out a little in my predictions, more substantively, I'm going to go on the record here with a little bit of a spicy take and say that the bigger adjustment is not the West Coast schools adjusting to the physical style of play of the Big Ten Conference, but it's the Big Ten Conference, and especially like the Big Ten West, or school, even to a certain extent, a school like Penn State, very, very talented, but that relies just on ground and pound, and can't throw the forward pass, and then never can beat a team that's actually legitimately better than them. Kind of sounds like certain other or comparable in talent. Who does that sound like? That adjustment to 3 high-powered offensive programs.
I think Hooligan, if you just look at like, obviously
USC and Oregon,
the timing of it isn't a direct correlation to all the hires, but everybody went out and got offensive minded head coaches, or they fired their OC and went out and got new OCs. And to the point of even some people that typically relied on like nepotism hires, they went out of their coaching networks to decide to like make sure their offenses were going to be better or match at least a little bit of their defensive, prowess. So you can definitely see that the majority of teams are already gearing up to score more points. Whereas I think outside of USC, there wasn't really any crazy culture changes at any of these programs. Like Oregon, Washington, UCLA already play, this brand of football. Whether or not UCLA is good at it or not, it's one thing, but these guys already play that brand of football on top of having elite quarterback play. That's what we're bringing to the conference. We're bringing elite quarterback play, not highly ranked guys like Aller, not Cade McNamara. Bro, anyway. So they're going to have to really get adjusted to the high-level quarterback play.
Not relying on a significant leveling up of your offense coming from, checks notes, a Minnesota QB transfer.
And that's supposed to be a team that is
for one of the
upgrading their quarterback.
Yeah.
It is an upgrade.
I mean, it is an upgrade, but you're upgrading from what? And I'll admit, in all likelihood, I'm a realist. Will Rogers is not Michael Penix. He's not. Mike Penix is a generational quarterback at the University of Washington.
Mm.
That doesn't mean Will Rogers can't be still pretty damn good and Jake Browning level.
If Michael Penix and Will Rogers are in the same transfer portal class, Will Rogers has more people calling his phone. Like, that's just real shit.
Because he doesn't have the injury. He missed one season to the injury as opposed to 3. And particularly an era where it's air raid, and he comes out of air raid systems, and that's yeah.
Oh my God. If you're to tell me that Will Rogers is going to be comparable to Browning, I will take that all day, every day.
And I'm not saying he even needs to be Jake Browning, because the other thing that, and what I will say in like Jake Browning that he's going to have, and is probably like, we'll talk about it at length, the biggest question mark on this team is the offensive line. What's easier for an offensive line to do? Run block or pass block? And what who might they be blocking for? Like a starting running back that came with this staff from their previous coaching stop, and a projected starter that lost last year due to injury.
But the running back room, you 3, 4, 5, you know what I mean? At least 3 deep. Whole gang of them.
Whole gang of them.
Yeah. I know you just heard me talking about that, man. I just said top 5 to 8 just to be nice, to not ruffle no feathers, you know what I mean? But
yeah, with significant upside. But all right, let's get into it. We're going to go game by game, and then we're going to do some overall, individual, player call outs. But so we'll start the year. We've got a Friday night, 8 p.m. kick on the 31st of this month. Or no, is that a Saturday or is that a Friday?
Saturday. I was like,
it's a Saturday. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was getting a couple of our Friday games mixed in there. So yes, we have a Saturday at 8 p.m. First appearance on the Big Ten Network against Weber State at Husky Stadium. What do we all think? DP, I know you've been quiet, so we're going to tee this one up for you first, bud.
Just be so serious right now. Please be so serious right now. I mean, look, I was there for Montana. That happened.
Better not be going then.
But I will not be in attendance. So I really do think that's all there is to be said. The other thing I'll say is last year I said 1 win. Year before that I said 2 wins. So just know what we're getting ourselves into with me predicting a win here, week 1.
Wow,
well,
that's
and
meaningful.
Predicted all wins in 2021 if memory serves. So
yeah, that went well.
Yeah.
Dan, did you really? I knew it was like 10 or 11, but damn, it was 12.
I think it was 10.
Yeah. Okay.
It was enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, and I gotta say, like, I'm gonna jump in here, but and I'll give my real thoughts in a minute. But I really, truly worry about the pressure for Washington on playing on an actually functioning conference network that shows games live instead of the 10 greatest Cal football players for the 1,307th time.
That's
I think that might be too much for us to overcome. That's the key factor that I'm worried about in this one.
I'm tired of it. I'm tired of watching it. Gymnastics again. I love you, ladies. I love you, ladies. I mean, I got a dub. I got a dub as well. What I will say is, I didn't really dive in on Weber State too much, but last year they definitely had like a crazy up and down year where you get blown out by Weber State, blown out by teams like Utah, but then you beat a team, like Idaho and Cal Poly. So they're formidable a little bit at their level, but I think that's a foot to ass, belt to ass.
Yeah, I have no idea how good or bad Weber State is, not gonna lie. But yeah, there's got to be a dub. My guess is probably start out a little slow, being all the new guys, so you can see some fans probably freaking out first half. My guess is that we look bad or maybe, but yeah, we should hopefully pull out comfortably with the win. Hopefully by like 20 so points maybe.
Yeah, I see us getting the dub here. It'll be not super close, but close, and then just getting the system going, and then we break it open.
Yep. I mean, in all reality,
come on,
we know what the University of Washington does to schools with the letters W, S, and U. Leaves them in the dust. I mean, maybe someday there will be two WSUs in the same conference, and it's not the Big Ten.
Winston-Salem. They're the real
one. That's called Wake Forest. Moving on to Saturday, September 7th, 12:30 p.m. kick again on the Big Ten Network. I got to shout out real quick that I've been listening to a lot of Split Zone Duo. Something that I actually am legitimately concerned about in this game is that they said that they'd heard from multiple coaches that Eastern Michigan is one of the dirtiest teams, if not the dirtiest team in college football. So health is going to be something that I'm going to be paying attention to. There are no rules at the bottom of the pile kind of thing. And I got to say the other thing I'm particularly concerned about in this one, it's we are playing a team called the Eagles. I'm really worried about them reaching out in the transfer portal last minute to Guahir the Windlord and the rest of his family from Middle Earth to cause havoc against our passing game. The great Eagles are coming. But in all reality, this is not them. This is a win. It may be, I don't necessarily think it's going to be the prettiest one, given what we know about them as a dirty and very physical, just muck it up MAC team. But I do think Washington gets this one done fairly comfortably. It's just not going to be a 60-14 kind of thing.
Shit, well, maybe it'll be a little test for us then if that's how they play. Are we going to match theirs? I mean, not like their... I'm going to talk about physicality mostly. Are we going to man up on that? So we'll see. But, I mean, this has got to be a W. I want to hear DP's prediction, though, on this one. Got me living on the edge.
I mean, being realistic here, this is probably the fourth best team in the state of Michigan. So if we lose this game, we should probably just disband the program, focus our investments on other sports. You can't lose to Eastern Michigan. Well, you can, but you really should not lose to Eastern Michigan. My only hope for this game is that the O-line gets through unscathed, because if we have a couple injuries up there heading into the Michigan game at the start of October, I think we're going to be in trouble for that. So the main thing to watch for me is just staying healthy on the lines.
Wow, so we're matching your prediction from 2 years ago, 2 games in. Wow.
We're doomed.
I know that this is a big step.
Yeah.
John
Dude,
Donovan, Jimmy Lake Redux, clearly.
we have to get this dub. We cannot lose to this team. This would be bad. Very bad
with
going into the
wins
first season
coming,
of the Big Ten.
going to be hard
Yep.
pressed to come by. In the last half of the season, this is when you got to lock up. This is a easy dub for me. I actually did hear that like rumble too, which is kind of interesting. But it didn't really translate into winning or beating the best teams on their schedule or being physical when it mattered or you know what I mean. So to the point of the offensive line, I think this is a type of game that you kind of match nasty and just see what your levels are. This is a game where a guy like Brennan Carroll is like kind of tries to get the best out of this unit, and I think this is the game where we'll see a little bit of kind of some foresight of what to see with the starting offensive line moving forward. The best five. Then Weber State, you try to figure that out. Oh, it's this starting guy. Oh, this guy is maybe not. I think Eastern Michigan, you kind of drive those points home.
Yep. I think it's I think in particular the style of Eastern Michigan. I think it's the chance to really set a tone in terms of physicality, and I do think we, like I said, I think we get this done by ultimately a pretty comfortable margin, which will move right along to our Tugs. Any further thoughts?
Oh, we gotta get this dub. We can't lose this game going into our first season in the Big Ten. That just especially like what Hood said, like the end of the season is tough. So
Might as well kick us out of the Big Ten if we lose this one.
Yep. And speaking of games we just can't lose, the following Saturday, 12:30 at Lumen Field. It's the Apple Cup in September.
That's crazy.
DJ,
Still
what do you
not
think?
used to it.
You go the first on this one.
Yeah, I was just saying that's crazy. That playing Apple Cup September. Yeah, never thought it'd be another day than in November. But here we are. Yeah, we get this W. We need to. Can't stand the Cougars as much as I mean, don't hate them like I hate Oregon, but we're around a lot of Cougs around here, and they can be annoying, especially if they win. They're nonstop yapping.
oh gosh,
I go ahead, DP.
I mean, yeah, I think DJ said it. It's definitely gonna be weird playing in September as opposed to knowing this was always going to be the team that gets a chance to spoil the season if we're having a good one heading into conference championship week just because of where rivalry week was. But again, looking at our schedule, like Hood said, we really got to get the wins early, and I think they're going to know that. And I just don't see. I don't think I've predicted a single loss to the Cougars in my Doognostication in the last couple of years, and I don't see that changing here. Just being realistic.
Yep, I'm gonna modify a take from a former Washington great.
At all.
I'm just gonna say we don't lose to no Coug.
No.
Most of the time, no, but yeah.
We're competently coached.
Regardless of their
when we're not,
personnel.
we're in trouble.
But
we are this year, so. And their personnel is not, I mean, like, they didn't lose as much as Oregon State did. But let's not say that, like, Washington State has like, they have some pieces.
Yeah, they have Oregon Duck superstar Keith Brown.
You got to remember, superstar.
I forgot about that.
And we do have I will say, shouts to Coach Richardson, because I actually think that we have a defensive, and the rest of the defensive staff for that matter, I think we actually have a defensive staff that might think about playing the right coverages in key situations in this game, unlike last year. And I don't think we're going to need Jeremiah or Denzel to take a reverse late in this one.
Yeah, they just don't have. They don't really have the personnel on defense. I do like some of their edge pieces. I do like Buddha at linebacker. Obviously, my local guys. You got two running backs with Leo and DJ Javinsky. You got my dog Trey Lechner, who they decide to put all over the damn place, offense, defense. Now I think he's tight end, but at the end of the day, man, this should be built to ass as well. And I think this one, I think these vibes need to be personal. I don't really think this staff has any disdain for Wazoo or anything like that. But I think a lot of the players and the fans really felt a lot of the off season and a lot of their fans kind of talking a certain way. Even if we had any type of like likening or empathy for Wazoo, they still kind of acted a certain way. So I just personally want this to be the statement. Forget a Weber State, forget Eastern Michigan. I want this to be the statement for sure. So I think this is a smacking too. I think they probably start off like every game. The first three. I think they start off slow. I think they're led by their defense and the defensive intensity, and then the offense matches that. I think that's going to be the theme of the year. I think the defense starts off holding it down, and the offense kind of like piggybacks off the defense's energy for sure.
Yeah, I will say, as much as I shouted out Split Zone Duo, and I really do like that show from a national perspective, I think they do a great job. I will say that they were talking a little bit about this in their Pac-12 preview and how amped they were saying, how that the Cougars could pack this place, and I'm like, they have not been paying attention to the sentiments of a lot of Cougar fans on social media about how they feel about the continuation about the Apple Cup. So Lumen Field is not a neutral site, point blank.
Better not be.
Of course, yeah.
There's going to be a lot of Coug fans there, though.
There'll be a lot of Coug fans there,
I bet you it'll be 60-40.
I mean, this is 50-50. Their Super Bowl. Like, this means a lot more.
No, it should be more.
Yeah.
This actually is their Super Bowl.
Yeah.
If you read what they're saying on social media, a lot of them are boycotting it. So see if they actually come through with that. A lot of them are saying, I'm not going to go to the Apple Cup. They're going to want to prove a point.
They're going to want to talk shit in the stadiums. They're going to want to...
Yeah.
Nah, that ain't going to stop. Because what other meaningful game do they play this year?
And then, they legitimately could win 8 or 9 games, but that's not a meaningful game because Oregon State is...
I know, I was being
Oregon State was a clearance, was a clearance sale. Everything must go. I mean, and I feel bad for the Beavs. That's actually, I'm not trying to slam the Beavs, but that's the truth of the matter, right? Down there. Moving on, we come back, moving back from a slight bus trip to Lumen Field the following weekend. We welcome another purple team named the Wildcats to Husky Stadium on that Saturday, September 21st. We don't have a time yet for this game. It's Superhero Day at Husky Stadium. Do we see some, revenge of a team named the Wildcats? Do we get, some more purple confusion? We know Brains meet Brawn, but this game will determine if Fish meets Brawn. Northwestern has some pieces, and shouts to David Braun for a really incredible coaching job that he did last year. A well-deserved Big Ten Coach of the Year. With that said, and they do have some pieces, but Washington is undefeated at home in the last 2 seasons. Northwestern is, while good, is still Northwestern. There are teams that I might worry about coming to Husky Stadium and winning a game.
Nope.
Against us. Northwestern is not one of them.
Yeah. I don't see that happening.
All right, I guess I'm going to be the downer here because I will say that I think Northwestern in general is getting a little bit of disrespect for a team that won 8 games last year and returns 4 guys on the offensive line with double-digit starts in their career. And then they got returning starter running back in Cam Porter. Did not have a great year last year, but I think that was more due to the line than anything. So I think if the line takes a step forward, we could be in trouble with their ground game. The big thing for me, though, when looking at this matchup and the reason why I think we're going to win is what they have at receiver. So off the top of my head, they got Bryce Kurtz and they got AJ Henning and then what? Right. And I think the teams that are going to hurt us this year, at least in terms of being able to score on us, are going to be the teams who can, spread it out and who have the depth to attack our defensive backs. When you only have, 2 high-level receivers, I really don't see that matchup working out well for you, just looking at what we have in the defensive backfield. So for that reason, I think this is a win.
Damn. In-depth analysis. I love it.
Bro.
Northwestern,
DP's leveling up his game, Mike.
Yeah. Shit, because my prediction all comes to the field, just seeing the field that Northwestern's playing on this year. I'm going with the Dogs.
But this is one of the games that I'd like. Real talk. This is going to be one of the games where we're going to start to learn something about Washington. We're going to start learning something about Washington, and the Big Ten Conference is going to start learning something about Washington, and what Jed Fish at Washington means, and what Steve Belichick at Washington means. Shouts out to everybody that thinks that that Steve Belichick was a nepotism hire like Brian Ferentz. This is not that. And while I think that, like I was saying, and we'll get to it with, like, I think there are running games in this conference that do give me concern, given the fact that we do have largely unproven. We're unproven at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. I think I would project that we're probably a little more talented on the defensive side of things. And I think with the Belichick scheme that we've talked about a lot about being multiple and bringing things from different areas and scheme. This is a game I think that's going to really prove that point. And I think that there's going to be times like that they're going to have Northwestern is going to have some success running the football against us, but they're also going to be forced into some third and medium and third and long situations. And I'm sorry. And yes, they have a mobile quarterback, but we have some, like, you talk about packages and where we talk about you talk about the depth chart, like it's like, yeah, like the interior is a little bit of a concern. But there's also like wave upon wave upon wave that the staff can bring from the edge and like the 3-tech. Like, we don't have a bunch of nose tackles. We don't have a Vita Vea on this roster. But I think I'm sorry, like, unless somebody is literally Caleb Williams with a team that's got Lance Holtzclaw and Ward and Russell Davis, I'm not worried about a lot of you have to be a pretty elite level athlete to run around and run past some of those guys, or to get outside of them. And even if you get outside of them, hello Carson Bruner, hello Zotup, hello Brian Parham. In case you haven't noticed, Brian Parham.
Cam Fab will be a part of the box as well. Well, at times too. So getting a Cam Broussard as well, Justin Harrington as well. So
your guy Cam Broussard.
Mobile quarterbacks won't be as big of a problem as they were last year. I think our team speed, just speaking on Washington, I think our team speed is significantly improved from last year. Now going into Northwestern, I mean, nobody's scared of Mike Wright. To DP's point, nobody's scared of those receivers. Now they do return, a decent amount of their offensive line. They return a decent amount of people on defense. I really like Anto Saka. He's a guy who can probably play, edge at any school in the Big Ten. And backing up Cam Porter is Joseph Hyman, who's kind of their change of pace, their explosive receiving back, who definitely hits explosives in the screen game, the short check down game. But overall, man, at the end of the day, there's levels to programs. And I just think while we may, struggle in regards to filling them out early on and things like that, I think we're going to have the ability just to kind of lean on them and kind of show that we can play that Big Ten style of football. I think Northwestern this year is very overrated. You had, the new head coach, he inherited, Fitzgerald's, players. And at the end of the day, he lost a decent amount of those. And it's, come on, big facts. And it's culture, you know what I mean?
And it's culture. Don't forget that part.
If losing that culture is probably not a bad thing.
We'll say football culture. He definitely had a real solid
Fitzgerald
football culture
is no longer
there.
their coach.
And then they didn't. If you look at their transfer portal class, if you look at their high school recruiting class, they didn't get anybody to supplement their roster to improve it from last year. So, when people analyze these rosters, I think this is a bottom 3 roster in the whole Big Ten. So, with that being said, I think this is cake.
Yeah, I mean, and Muller's a good linebacker, but he's more of a 2-down linebacker. I'm sorry, that guy against Jonah Coleman and Cam Davis in space.
Their team speed's not there.
Especially Jonah.
Their depth's not there. Their interior's not there. I think they got one player on the interior that's pretty solid.
Yeah, this is the kind of game that's going to prove what I was talking about earlier about the adjustment of the rest of the conference.
They got, I think,
to West
Aaron
Coast
Johnson
offenses.
stays, so they got a pretty solid
and West Coast
or whatnot. But I mean, you're gonna need full position groups. You're gonna need a full side of the ball contribute. This individual player stuff is not what we're going to be losing to in 2024. We're going to be losing the position groups if we do. We're losing position groups or whole sides of the ball. So,
yep. Any other thoughts on Northwestern? And I'm not talking about Sig Hansen ship that's more than Ballard.
2001, baby.
Maybe deadliest, Denzel Boston or Jeremiah Hunter will have the deadliest catch to this Northwestern. Moving on to Friday, September 27th at Rutgers. It's a Friday night in Jersey on Fox. To quote one of Fox's most famous characters, this is a stadium and likely a stadium full of Bon Jovi fans. I do sadly think that the Huskies' chances to win here are probably living on a prayer, especially with the coverage of the game delayed for the second consecutive trip to Rutgers by a truck race.
I actually
so that's a big
they're
concern
going to give
for
us a hard time. I think it's mainly going to be due to, if you have to go into a season, let's say like USC or Florida, you're like, I'm ready for all the smoke, but you, in the back of your head, your schedule is ridiculous. You know that you probably ain't gonna win certain games. So there's this, lack of confidence to begin the season. You personally have this competitive nature, but you know damn well that like some of these are not gonna be wins or tough. Rutgers gets the advantage of looking at their schedule and being like, if we win all of these games, Washington is one of our 2 tough games. If we beat Washington, we have an opportunity for X, Y, and Z. So I think when they're looking at us at home, I think we are kind of going to be that that temperature check for their program, for their season. So I definitely think you're going to see them, come out guns a-blazing. They got Ethan Kaliak-Manis from Minnesota, who, albeit better than Gavin Wimsatt, but he's not great. He was going to get big at Minnesota. He was.
I mean, he was going to get benched at Minnesota.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why I transferred.
At Minnesota.
Wanted
and you would think with PJ Fleck, you'd be a little bit more proficient in the pass game. But I would say, man, one of my favorite. I think we're gonna get this dub. I think this is gonna be the scary win. I think this is gonna be the one where a lot of national pundits go, "Oh, look, see, we told you." Even though we win, even though we're 5-0, I think this is gonna be one where they're like, "Oh, well, you see, they got ran on. They got thrown on." But the whole Big Ten, because Dymere Miller is not probably a top 5 receiver in the big or a top 5 portal addition at receiver in the whole country. I get that he played at Monmouth, but if you watch him play, there's a high level of skill there too and speed. Dymere Miller's crazy. Oh, my bad. Go ahead, bro. My fault. I'm done.
Man, I was going to talk about Miller. You're killing me. No, you're good. I mean, looking at this team, I think a lot of question marks on offense outside of the running back room, which I think is quite good. Obviously Monagai, but they also have Sam Brown, who's a pretty good player himself. The big thing for me is on defense. They have Aaron Lewis, who's probably one of the better edge guys in the conference. And then they're bringing back Loyal and Dixon in the defensive backfield, safeties. So I think they're going to be pretty decent defensively. But the question is what they're going to be through the air outside of Miller. I don't know what their pass catchers look like. I don't see them being able to throw the ball on us. And at the end of the day, if you can't throw the ball, it's going to be difficult to keep up with the offense. This is going to be a tough game, especially with Michigan the next week. So it could be pretty easy to look forward to that one. Definitely could be difficult, but realistically, I think looking when the schedule dropped, we knew that we should be 5-0.
I appreciate that analysis, bro.
Thank you. I do think that's what's going to happen.
I do too.
I got a bad feeling about this game going across country. I got a bad feeling. I don't know. I kind of like their head coach a little bit.
He's good.
I think he's a decent head coach. I mean, probably going off of what he did this first time at Rutgers there before he left. yeah, I got a bad feeling about this game for some weird reason.
DJ.
Yeah, this is tough. I mean, I think you guys all said good points about Friday night game going across the country. Yeah, it was a toss up between this game and another game later on in the schedule that I think we're going to lose one of those two games. I'm not going to reveal what the other one is. I just did a coin flip on my own here, and I guess the coin flip says that we lose this one. So that means I'm going to put a W on the other one. I'll mention in a little bit, but I don't know. I'm just going off. I don't know, just gut feeling, I guess. Regardless,
DP, bro,
it's going to be
like
close, probably.
I know you
think to the
probably
end.
saw it, but Shaquan Loyal, they have the other Igbinosun. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, they're returning guy. So they
That
lost,
was it.
I think Max Milton.
So yeah, they got
at DB,
Igbinosun,
but that was it. So
Loyal,
their DB
and
room is
like
pretty
two other
good.
people. So they're gonna be solid on the back end. It's just like who's stopping the run, and then Mo Torrey went down this week.
It's up front.
So
the question.
like, and he's their only
And
NFL prospect.
That's a big
on
one for them
offense,
too, because
so
he was their by far their best linebacker last year.
The running back last year, like because if you watch the running back play last year,
yep,
he ran in the 8-9 boxes, but it was more like just like gutsy. Like it wasn't overall like any like crazy skill ability. He's just kind of a big dude who falls forward, grinds it out. He wasn't good
grind it
to
out.
me. Like I was struggling. I was like, how the hell
4
did you get 1,400 yards, bro? Like what? Like that's what I'm saying.
I'd have to check his stats. I didn't feel like there was a lot of explosives.
He just leaned on people, but I didn't see it. Sam Brown was more
but
prominent.
I mean, explosive.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this.
Yeah.
Don't ever doubt DP's knowledge when it comes to sports. This man knows everything about every single sport, anything. Where during the Olympics and group chats, he knew all about all these, like, I don't know, marathon runners, 400 meters, every single one. He knows everything. So don't doubt what he's saying.
DP, we got to get you back on a more consistent basis. So just like do a special segment, just ask
it's not
DP
FAQ.
like some random sports
yeah,
question.
He can do any sport. He knows.
Fireside chats with DP.
Yeah.
But I, in all seriousness, I think this game is really one of the linchpins of our entire season. If we go out to Piscataway and win this game, it's going to tell me a lot about this Washington football team. And conversely, if I think I won't be necessarily brokenhearted if we lose a close game, and there's still a very positive path forward if we lose a close game. But I think if we have a big problem with Rutgers, I think that's gonna be more of a concern and a little bit of a warning flag. Ultimately, I do think that we might have enough or I do think we do actually have enough to win a close fought game. But again, it's not one where I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely a win, or oh, that's definitely a loss either.
Great.
So at the end of the day, I think we are 5-0 heading into the national championship game rematch with Michigan coming to town on October 5th. It is a purple out. It's a national championship game rematch. I'm going to jump in first on this one, and I'm not going to do the funny version of this. I mean, maybe some of my real analysis might be a little funny, but their defensive line and their defensive tackles, granted, without Dylan Johnson, who was one of the key elements of our pass protection scheme last year, destroyed us in the national championship game, and that was against a more winning offensive line. We don't have that this year. So from our side, Mason Graham and Kenneth Clark against our O-line is a big yikes. On the flip side of that, Jack Tuttle, Alex Orji as your likely quarterback.
How do you say that last name?
Orji.
Well, not the fun kind though.
Whoa.
It might be a fun kind for if you're a defensive back.
Touche.
Because a national, that's the funny thing is, if we want to talk about the national narratives, and I get it from our offensive line perspective, They also lost their coach. Granted, it was an in-system promotion, but if you look at the two teams that were in last year's national championship game, one of them has a huge question mark at the most important position on the field.
Yep.
One of them has a guy that's top 5 all-time in the SEC in passing yards and passing touchdowns. Yes, I get that it was an air raid system, but if you buy into any of the narrative that the SEC is an elite defensive league, and you hear Will Rogers say something like, this is the most talking about our defense, that this is the hardest defense that he's ever had to face or prepare for because of all of the different things that this scheme can do. It's like one of these things either has to be true. Either what Steve Belichick and the defensive staff that Jed Fish brought, along with Steve Belichick, that brought to Washington, is really, really, really good at, and is going to do some things that are going to absolutely wreak havoc and potentially win Washington some football games. Or if that's not necessarily the case, Will Rogers might be pretty good. Or even, or if that is, or if it is that case, Will Rogers is probably going to be pretty good because he's been reasonably successful in practices and scrimmages against this defense, or against schemes that were comparably. And by the way, Will Rogers has played against Georgia multiple times in his career. So
fake dogs, though, they don't count.
I love that. They're DOGs.
All right. Yeah. This is probably
we get DAWGS because we have an accent, y'all.
This is probably the team besides UW and Oregon that I know the most about in this conference. So I'll do a quick little position by position run through. Running back, we got Donovan Edwards coming back, and Mullings is coming back. So they're gonna have a nice duo there. I will say Donovan Edwards, outside of the Natty, wasn't actually that crazy last year. He okay, well, yeah, you can put it that way. No, he cooked our shit, so I'll give him that.
Were you talking about him, or were you talking about the angles that certain defensive players from last year's team took on him on those runs?
I don't know what you're talking about. The entire second half of that game's out of my memory. Anyway.
Blacked out.
So Mullings was
second
pretty good last year.
Or the whole thing.
Touche, yeah. Mullings was pretty good last year, but we'll get to the O-line in a second, and I do think his touches were kind of a product of that O-line. At wide receiver, they got Morgan coming back, but I don't think he's like your traditional outside guy. Like, I don't know the roster. He's probably 175 pounds soaking wet. So he's not your traditional outside guy. So you're probably going to see Tyler Morris out there. He got a couple starts last year. And then they got CJ Charleston coming in from Youngstown State. That was, for me, that was actually a big ad. I liked what they did there. And then they have the other guy I think you could see is Frederick Moore. Tight end, they got lockdown starter Colson Levlin, probably the best tight end in the conference, in my opinion.
Might be the best tight end in the country.
Yeah, he could be an All-American this year. Hogan Hansen being there kind of stung when I looked through their depth chart. Because he
wouldn't have happened with the staff for a full cycle because the staff is making more of a priority walking down the state.
Now, the interesting part of the offense is the offensive line, because they lost all 5 of their guys who started last year. So they brought in Miles Hinton, I think last year. So he has some starts in terms of experience. I watched the film on him. I don't think he's that good. And if that's your left tackle, I don't. I have some questions. They got the guard from Northwestern, who has a lot of experience. So I think that's going to be a big one. Outside of that, I mean, they have like 300 snaps across the offensive line. So don't get me wrong, Donovan Edwards, very talented running back. His 2022 season was crazy. Mullings, pretty good running back. He was quite good last year when he did see the ball. But there's definitely question marks there. And so what I would say here is that looking at the quarterback room, you got Orgy, who has, I think he's thrown 1 pass in his entire career. And you have Jack Tuttle ass. So you're putting an inexperienced quarterback at best behind an offensive line without a lot of experience. When is that ever at any level of football a good combination? Right? So and
it's not because of injury.
Yeah, if they can't run the ball, I don't know what they're going to do. And don't get me wrong, Loveland's a good player. Like we just said he's probably an All-American. If they can't run the ball, I don't know what they're doing on offense. And with that offensive line, that could be a question mark. They have some guys in house, so we'll see how they do. But there's not a lot of experience there, and we're catching them pretty early in the season. Defensive side of the ball, defensive line is best in the conference. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant. Graham was unbelievable.
I said Kenneth Clark, but it's Kenneth Grant. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah. Mason Graham, All-American as well for me. Chris Jenkins obviously gone, but in terms of actual starters on the interior, I think they have the best duo in the conference, hands down. Their edge rushers, Derek Moore's coming back, and I want to say Josiah Stewart, is coming back. Derek Moore was, I think he was like 5-star coming out of high school, and then last year, sophomore year, was kind of like, okay, this guy's legit. And then Stewart coming in from, I want to say Coastal Carolina. He was quite good last year. I think he had close to double-digit sacks. This is probably the best front four it's definitely the best front four we're going to see all year. It might be the best in the country. It's definitely the best in the Big Ten, in my opinion. And then they got
he's filthy.
Barham from Maryland in the linebacker room. He's unbelievable. Hosman, good in the run game. I'll say that. He can stop the run. Can he cover guys if I'm being nice?
Come on.
No.
You see it.
If I'm not being nice, he's going to get burnt up and down the field. Outside of that, I think it's either Jimmy Rolder or Jaden Hood is going to be their third linebacker. I honestly, looking at this room, I think they're really, really reliant on the defensive line to stop the run. And then looking at their cornerbacks, I mean, Will Johnson, don't really know what else there is to say. He might be the best player in the country. I mean, okay, on the defensive side of the ball, you can debate about the value of cornerbacks, but he's the best cornerback in the country. I don't want to hear no Travis Hunter bullshit. And then they lost.
Hey, shouts to Prime for getting the hat on the table and not CU.
Now, here's the thing, though. Like, we've talked about, they have the starters on the interior. They have the starters on the edge. At cornerback, they have Will Johnson. And then, I mean...
Mikey's not there anymore. And Mikey was probably the player of the game in the national championship game, if we're honest.
I mean, they got Amir Hall from Albany.
Oh. You saying they got Tugs back there?
I've got a question here. And this is actually no disrespect intended to Sharon Moore and the staff at Michigan. But given a situation where you describe where it's potentially likely that both teams in this game have suspect to potentially below average offensive line play, who do you trust to come up with a functional offense? The team with a prolific starting quarterback, a proven prolific starting quarterback, and an offensive coaching staff that has coached all over everywhere in the NFL. And from all the practice reports, Will Rogers is definitely basically hits the final step of his drop and gets the ball out quick AF for the big question marks, and a team that is overly reliant and wouldn't trust their multiple year starting quarterback. Granted, a high draft choice, and I'm sorry, JJ, it's unfortunate. I do think it's a real bum deal that he hurt his knee and is going to be out for this season. But they didn't trust him.
Yeah,
in most situations to throw the ball to win them games, and they don't have that guy right now.
Here's my thing with that in the quarterback room, right? You're the defending national champions, and I'll get to the safeties in a second. But looking at the defense, right, you have the caliber of talent here to be top 5 defense in the country if all your starters stay healthy, which is an if. Like we know how this conference goes. The fact that they didn't bring anybody in that room who was an established high-level starter, to me, it's one of two things. One, overconfident. Like you're just saying the guys in our room are good enough, and no JJ, no problem. Or two, we simply didn't see, like we couldn't get a quarterback. Either way, I definitely think that's a big concern for them. For me, like I'm looking at the safeties. They got Makari Page, but Rod Moore.
He's one of their.
Rod
he's
Moore
like
is,
one of their coaches.
I believe he's out for the year
now, but yeah, out for the year.
Yeah.
Okay, the motion you made that sounded like he might have died. It was like
no. His knee died.
Okay, all right.
And then they brought in Wesley Walker from Georgia Tech.
Jaden Mangum.
I think Hood's reaction says enough on that.
Briefly,
they got a guy from UNLV, bro. They're good.
Briefly, if I may return to the national narrative conversation that we were talking about earlier. This is the team that the national media and the national cognoscenti has as a top 10 team in the country.
I mean, look. If I'm going to say that a lot here, if everybody stays healthy on the defense and everybody plays to their ceiling and whoever they pick to play quarterback gets the job done.
Isn't Cade McNamara?
And their brand new offensive line without a single start playing next to each other in their entire career gels. Sure. Yeah. Top 10, top 5 team. I mean, the talent.
That's as many. My point is that's as many ifs as we have, if not a few more.
Yeah. And I think to me, this matchup is going to come down to two things. One, we're playing them in Husky Stadium, so that's gonna be big time. And two, what do we got on the lines? I genuinely think this is a winnable game if UW can figure out the offensive line. If there's an above average group at that position, I genuinely believe that this is a UW win. For me, that's a little bit too big of a question mark to go ahead and mark this down as a win. This was one of the games I circled as a loss, but I'm telling you, this is not necessarily just an auto loss like a lot of people would think it is.
I was just going to say, so based on what you're saying, because you know a lot more than I do about any team, first of all, but about Michigan, so it sounds like, because their defense was the best in the country last year. Yeah. But they may take a slight step back.
Big step back.
If healthy. Do you think they're number one?
It should.
Big step back?
It should still be a really good defense. But like I said, they're relying on a lot of ifs.
Okay, but then their offense is definitely going to take a step back.
100%. Yeah. I mean, they're hoping for 4 yards in a cloud of dust, and then Loveland bails them out. But if the offensive line doesn't gel,
I gotta go after you.
That's their only means of offense. So,
and who might have good mobile linebackers that could run with Colston Love, and good big size safeties that might be able to run.
I heard Purdue's pretty good this year.
Yeah. Bro, I gotta follow that. So to start, I will say, it hurts to say this part, but I'm gonna put it as a loss, right? But to your point, DP, I think that, if you're analyzing this team and you're trying to figure out, I think we got 7 wins pretty easy. I think we're 5-0. I think Indiana and UCLA are cake. I think that's 7. But if we're trying to get between 8 to 10, 10 is like super high into that, which I doubt we get. But if we get to 8 to 10, then I think this is a game, along with some other games.
We'll get to other games later.
Of the top 3 easiest of that second half in regards to like what you have set up for you. What I will say about the running back room is, while Donovan, killed us in the Natty, Mullins was solid throughout the year. When have they been relied on to win? They've never been a bell cow. Donovan got huge this offseason.
Never been a bell cow.
So he's gonna have to work on, what I'm saying, like he obviously is cognizant of, his durability. So is he going to have the same explosiveness? Is he going to sacrifice power for explosiveness? because Mullins is a power guy. So are they just going to try to like batter ram everybody all year with an offensive line that you mentioned 5 starters, but I think when Zinter went down, they threw in another guy, and that guy even is gone. So they lost 6 guys. And then to your point about the receivers, Morris and Tyler Morris and Samaj Morgan return, but they're both diminutive. They're both smaller guys. Samaj is going to have to learn the route tree. He's still a gadget guy, and while I think they'll try to use him in the route tree more, that's not where that's a part of his development. Kind of similar to Morris. Like I think Roman Wilson definitely had some route tree nuance and some route running nuance that neither one of these receivers really have. And they had the benefit of having actually a decent, obviously as we see now, a decent pro style quarterback to get them the ball, to make checks the line. You're not going to have that comfortability. You're going, you attack Jalen Milroe in the CFP. Well, now people are going to attack your line. They're going to attack your quarterback because they don't have that same experience as well as cohesion. In regards to the linebackers, you mentioned, Jay-Sean Barham. I think Jay-Sean is an all-conference caliber player. Sucks he left a great room in Maryland. But then Ernest Hauschman as their backup is really, really good as well. But you're good. What I'll say is
I said Hausman.
If you're trying to compare, I'm not gonna say that's a better linebacker, a better duo than what we have. I can't say that. So now where I will kind of
100%,
give them some praise is replacing Mikey Sainristil with Zeke Berry, who I'm very high on, but he has to prove it. You know what I mean? Like I was arguing with Michigan folks, and they were trying to tell me he's next. I was arguing with Big Ten folks that are trying to tell me he's next, and I did a comparison to Michaela Steen. Like, why aren't you giving Michaela Steen the same respect, who actually has tangible, production in a small sample size? Right, whereas Zeke Berry's been limited to special teams and has 3 clear total tackles, but he gets more. They have backup guys they're highly ranked, and you're not giving our guy that that benefit of the doubt. And then I think at corner they did get Ricky Johnson from UNLV, who's like he's mid, and the guy that you mentioned from Albany is also mid. But I think a guy in that room that's doing well is Jair Sugar Hill. He's doing pretty well, albeit still kind of a light in his frame. But I do feel like Washington, like these two teams are very comparable. So I do have this. It's funny, like in my notes, I have winnable 50-50 game. I think a big thing is going to be their offense. Everybody's giving their defense credit, but they rotated a lot on that defensive line to keep those guys fresh. And those are the last guys you need fresh. If they're fresh, we're going to dominate any game. You losing Chris Jenkins is big, not because of Chris Jenkins, but because you now have to have these 2 guys playing all game. I think they lost 2 other edges that were part of a 4-man rotation, or maybe one other edge that was a part of this 4-man rotation. Now Stewart and Moore have to shoulder the full load of that. So where guys were relied on as rotational guys, starters, but rotational guys, now they have the weight's all on them, and then behind them is guys that have never had these snaps before. Similarly, obviously, like to us. But then the offense being able to milk the clock helped the defense out. That's not going to happen. The defense is going to be in inopportune times all season. I think they went to the Penn State game before the defense had a red zone snap. That shit's not going to fly. Like, that's not happening this year. That's the level of like the defense that they were last year, and that's nowhere close. So I do think this is going to be a closer game. I do think it's going to be, both teams are going to score probably, 2-3 times. It's going to be a relatively lower scoring game. But this is definitely 50-50. I'll put this as a loss as of now, but if we won, I would not be surprised at all.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of like floor and ceiling outcome, if you look at these teams compared to the rest of the Big Ten, I think this is probably 2 of the biggest ranges. Because like we said, if shit breaks right for Michigan, like they could be legit on the defensive end. If they have a quarterback, they're a good team. With us, we're kind of looking at a similar situation where our ceiling's pretty high and the floor is maybe not quite as high as we'd like. So I agree with characterizing this game as a toss-up. For me, just looking at their D-line versus our offensive front, that's why I have this game as a loss, but I don't want to say it's not winnable because it absolutely is.
And everything everything that you guys are saying, you know what this game sounds a ton like, and it wasn't necessarily because we actually had more proven commodity, or we had an unproven commodity at the time at quarterback, and we have a more proven commodity at now at quarterback. But the last time that Michigan came to Husky Stadium was actually a relatively low-scoring game, and the game broke on a blocked field goal, and that was returned for a touchdown, and then an interception that was returned for a touchdown by Amari Lowe. There is, when you have questions with Michigan at quarterback, you've got some and you have something that is, I think right now, I think we all would agree, the strength of the Washington defense in this scheme and where we have the most talent is unquestionably in the back seven. Just saying that sounds, and you bring an unexperienced, or even if it's a seventh year in Jack Tuttle or Alec Orji, whose accuracy is questionable, you bring an inexperienced quarterback into what will
what
be
you mean questionable? He's got a completion. Single.
It will be what's going to be interesting to me about this game is, given the ticket price point right now,
bruh, please,
how much purple is the stadium and how much blue is in the stadium. But if it is what it should be, and it's at least 70-30 in our favor or 80-20 in our favor,
80. It's got to be
an experienced quarterback.
They're
going to
learn
stadium
real fast
Washington
about the
is
stadium,
potentially 5-0. To quote the guy that, and granted, it didn't turn out so well for him.
Good luck.
When he said it to Liam Neeson, but good luck. Or I'm going to use a better. I'm going to use a better reference from the movies, and I'm going to quote Morgan Freeman and saying like that. You think a billionaire with one of the most powerful companies in the world, is secretly a masked crusader, and your plan is to blackmail this person? Good luck. We heard a lot. I mean, there's a difference between programs in the state. Clearly, we heard a lot 2 years ago from Michigan State fans.
Yeah.
And what happened? I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen in this football game. But what happened when Michigan State came to Husky Stadium? Like, from what you hear from the people that know in the Big Ten is that of the returning members of the Big Ten, or the hardest environments in the Big Ten are Iowa and Penn State. It's not the Big House. It's not Michigan State. It's not Ohio State in terms of noise. And I'll even put, what, I'm gonna throw a bone to our feathered friends. The environments that are most like Iowa and Penn State, from what you're getting from the West Coast, are Washington and Oregon. And the University of Washington still holds the decibel record. And in that Oregon game, we hit 131 plus decibels, so we got
we're
damn
definitely
close
gonna let them hear it. I mean, if we're 5-0, bro, like, first of all, we're gonna be ranked. We're gonna be top 20, top 15, arguably. That's a potential even like game day site if Michigan ends up being, anything. You can market the rematch, all that kind of stuff. And even if you lose by 3 points, even if you lose by like 3 points, or you win, or
the hype on this game is
or make it a close game, you go toe to toe. What you do is you set the tone for the Big Ten, letting them know that I'm coming. But then also too, it's like you get to kind of talk about like program trajectory. You might have played last year or something like that, but like Washington's not going nowhere. Just like Michigan's not going nowhere. So then you just kind of get to match up with a comparable opponent, a comparable program recently, right? Other than the Natties, right? But just the comparable processes, on the field, off the field, all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to see that. I think this is going to be relative to that Oregon atmosphere. It was super cool. Just speaking of the crowd noise, super cool watching. Me and Hooligan were hanging out. I think it might have been a Utah game where we were with the Australian guy, man, who just was like baffled that we were this loud over football. Like, he was like, "This is fucking crazy. Like, you guys are ridiculous. Like, we're like this with soccer, but you guys are beating on the chairs and yelling and screaming." So we get busy, bro. Rugby, yeah.
Rugby, but not. Because Aussies have a laid
bro,
back.
Hooligan, he was bad, bro.
A laid back
he was
vibe
like,
that,
"This is
that we don't have.
Yeah,
Yeah. Woo. Yeah.
Michigan.
But let's move along because I think we've spent about the last 20 minutes or so talking about Michigan.
Wait,
let's move
hold on
out.
real quick. What's just one more thing. I didn't think about
And
even
Tugs
game
and
day
DJ,
being a
did we get
possibility.
predictions from
Look at
either
the
of
rank
you
right
on this
now?
one?
What's
Probably
Michigan?
Probably like 5, 6, 8, something like that.
Yeah, do they have them in the top?
Let me see. They're 9.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna put it as simple as
Ninth in the
possible.
AP, yeah.
It's an L. But you guys were pretty convincing in the way you guys described the potential matchup here to sway my vote. But I'm putting it as an L. But I was just gonna ask one more thing before Tug says his prediction. Who's Michigan play the games ahead of this? Because the game day potential game day being there for undefeated, I mean they are too, is pretty intriguing. Do you know who they play?
So they
I
might
know they got.
USC
I know they have
before.
Texas, and I know they have
Oh,
USC.
Oh
And
shit.
I
Yeah.
believe
They're playing
this is their
Minnesota.
first. This is their first road game, so they play all
Okay.
those games at home.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So even if they're 4-1,
Bro, they're gonna be
Fresno State,
hurting,
Texas,
dog.
Arkansas
They're gonna
State,
have so much
USC,
attrition.
Minnesota,
I'm gonna be quiet.
at Washington.
yeah. But if they're 4-1 and they're 5-0, that's gonna be two top
Because they gotta
20,
beat
maybe
USC and
top
they gotta
15
beat
teams.
USC
So
in
yeah,
Texas, bro. And that's not gonna. They
possible.
might
All right,
take
Tug.
2 of them L's. Anyway,
Yeah.
That's a pretty brutal
Texas's
first 6
chances in
games.
that.
Oh, you're right. That fucking
Texas's
sucks.
chances in that game with the 2 running backs going down is.
All right, move on.
That sucks for them. Let's move along into another litmus test, and Styles
We
make
forgot
fights.
Tugs.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Tugs.
No, I think this is an L2, but what everything that DP said that their offensive line coming into Husky Stadium and us have a better quarterback. It's winnable.
Very
We
much
can
so.
do it, but it's gonna be
This next
tough.
game, boy.
So
I'll tell you.
Yep. I'm right there with you.
And moving along to the following Saturday and a trip to Iowa City and Kinnick Stadium. The big questions for me in this one are, can the Hawkeyes offense? Can UW overcome a cooler wave than the one that was created at Husky Stadium? And speaking of which, if you're doing the wave in 2024 at a baseball stadium, just stop. Especially when your team is pitching. Not that it matters for the Seattle Mariners, but
man.
Hey, come on, bro.
But for me, I will say real quick, it's low key interesting matchup of the year with the Fish offense against the Ferentz defense. But I will also say it's a very interesting potential D on D matchup in what Steve Belichick and the Washington defense.
We scored 5.
I knew that was coming. Phrasing on myself. I honestly, I think without giving anything away, I think this is probably the second likeliest loss on our schedule.
Yeah.
This is a program that is built on defense. They defend very well. They coach it very well. Is there a path to Washington winning this football game? Absolutely. Again, if Iowa isn't much more than what they were last year on offense, at a certain point, no matter how much you play defense and field position, you're not going to stop Jonah Coleman, Cam Davis, Will Rogers, Jeremiah Hunter, Denzel Boston, Giles Jackson enough.
Agreed.
But this is going to be a rock fight football game. But this is also one of the teams, briefly, that when I talked about the Washington defense having the chances to locker some teams or put some teams in jail or put some teams through hell, it's offenses like Iowa's. It's even actually some good offenses, but in particular is bad offenses in the Big Ten.
Man, I'm trying really hard to we give Michigan a lot of credit in regards to their defense. I think it's Ohio State and Iowa that set the tone this year for defense. You look at Penn State, they're really good, at safety and then at edge. That's not a complete and pretty good at linebacker. That's not a complete defense. Iowa is good at their edges, their interior defensive line. They're elite at linebacker, elite in their secondary, and they have secondary depth. I just think it's a bad matchup, especially for the young, skilled players on offense. You can have guys like Denzel and Jeremiah be up to the task, but let's say those two guys are taken away. Can you trust, wide receiver 3 through 5 or 6, to deal with Sebastian Castro, to deal with Xavier, Nwankpa, to deal with Jay Higgins, to deal with Nick Jackson across the middle. And then, with all due respect to Quentin Moore and, Kaleki Latu, I wouldn't say those are two guys that like significantly stretch the field or stress DBs or anything like that. They may stress linebackers. They may be great in the run game. I just don't think we threaten Iowa's defense enough to really get them out of even vanilla. So if they get an opportunity to just really like tee off on us, which I think will happen, I think their defense just imposes their will on this game. I do think their offense is better than last year, which obviously isn't saying a lot, but they made the Big Ten championship game. You know what I mean? Without that, you've elevated from Deacon Hill to Cade McNamara, Ben Sullivan as a backup. So even if you do have Cade go down again, you have a way better floor than you had last year. You got a trio of running backs. I'm gonna leave DP to the names because I don't want to interrupt this swag. I will mention Caleb Johnson. Got to mention him. That's my dog. That's somebody I chose as a breakout player for Iowa on offense. So I got to mention him. Great running back, but they got a trio of running backs that'll definitely lean on every team. Now, when you get to receiver, that's when you get to the ass cheeks. And even tight end, bro. Like even tight end isn't the stereotypical Iowa room, other than Ostranga. I got to double check, but I don't think they're returning anything that's of any substance, outside of Ostranga. So we'll see there. But I definitely got this as an L. And reason being is environment first.
Yep.
And then defense for sure. Everything else is just kind of that.
I had so when I looked at the schedule, I penciled down 4 L's, and this is one of them. The reason being, not like, look, the matchup's bad in terms of what we're looking at. Their offensive line, I think, is quite good, which is definitely not something you want to see in a matchup where it's going to be pretty low scoring, because I think you're going to be able to ground and pound, like Hood said, with those running backs. But for me, Big Ten fans will tell you that Kinnick Stadium is brutal. And this is not a team that has experience there. This is not a team that has gone there, and they don't have coaches who know what that's like. Like, without the element of the stadium, you probably have a pretty close game that's pretty low scoring. If you don't watch Big Ten football, you do not understand how hard it is to come into Iowa City and win a football game. It is brutal. And for a team that's going to be coming off what's probably going to be a pretty physical contest with Michigan and a pretty emotional contest in Husky Stadium as a rematch of the national championship, I don't see us winning that game.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's not like Rutgers is not going to be a physical football game either, or Northwestern the week before that. It's the schedule did us no favors this year. And I will say, and by the way, you very, very well could see Iowa in a conference championship game this year as well, because their schedule sets up pretty damn nicely for them with that defense.
Yep.
So they tend to have a lot of Utah vibes, where it's like a bunch of tryhards work for 3, 4, 5 years, and they go to the NFL. And so then there's this reputation of great development. But this year, it really matches high-end talent with their process, which is I'm not going to say very rare, but I do think this is a very unique personnel and coaching match for Iowa that they rarely have They might have splashes of players that got developed, but they now have talent.
Yeah, top to bottom.
Now been developed, and now they're experienced. So it's a shitty combination, and I think it's a shitty combination for the Big Ten in general. I haven't really looked at Iowa's schedule, but in my opinion, I think they are the second best defense behind Ohio State and can be the best based on how that unit is coached. So,
on the topic of their schedule, do you remember? I forget the name of the ESPN reporter. 2016, he put the cupcakes on the sidelines. Quinn
Kassenich.
Yeah,
That's
right.
I was going to reference that because it was also like when you were talking, Tugs, earlier about Schiano at Rutgers the first time. Like, we scheduled them when Schiano, like, that agreement was when Schiano was their coach and they were good.
Yeah.
So,
again, Gus Edwards
shouts
was
to
their
ESPN
running
for
back.
shitting their narrative.
Gus Edwards was their running back. The running back for the Ravens, the 6'2", 240. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's an L. I'm sorry, it's going to be too tough of environment. And that's an L.
I agree.
Yep. DJ?
I don't think we can hear DJ, but he said
I think we lost DJ's audio, but DJ agrees.
He said L's.
Moving on, we've got a bye the following week, and then we make another.
We win the bye.
Almost. We win the bye.
Can't lose to bye.
Win the bye.
Yeah. We go halfway across the country, but this time to Bloomington, Indiana, and the James Madison Hoosiers. The concern that I've got with this one is that Jed, please don't forget to channel and make sure you bring your tape measure to show them that the raucous environment in the field in Bloomington, much like the court for Hickory High School, that the field in Bloomington is the same as it is in Husky Stadium. But in all seriousness, like, yeah, you can bring portal guys from James Madison, but come on now. It's still Indiana. It's not basketball.
Yeah. I got a dub.
It's a dub.
I got a dub, but
and honestly, I'd expect Danny Sprinkle if we played Indiana in basketball this year, I'd expect Danny Sprinkle to go to Indiana and win.
To win too
at Assembly Hall.
We get both, right? We get them at our place, right, and then theirs too, right?
I actually don't know. Ooh, that's a good question.
How that works? Yeah.
But talk about the football game, and I'll go look up at the basketball schedule.
My favorite team this offseason is Indiana. So I will try hard not to have that bias play a part in my prediction. I definitely feel like they're one of the more complete teams in the Big in regards to, like, if you as far as talent, experience, obviously not at Big Ten level, but it's still high in experience at JMU. You won a bunch of games in a really good system under a guy. I call Kalen DeBoer a sociopath centered around winning. I think Kirk Cignetti is relatively similar in his system and his approach to building a program. But I'll try to keep it short. But to ramble off, you grab James off the top of my head. You grab James Carpenter, Mo Kamara on the D line. They grabbed another defensive lineman as well from James Madison. So they got some top end starters there on the D line. James Carpenter would have been a huge addition to anybody in the country. And then at linebacker, you got Aiden Fisher, who could have probably went anywhere in the country. I believe led James Madison in tackles. Jalen Walker, second linebacker, came over. Very, very versatile, multiple linebacker. They got James Madison's best corner. They got James Madison's offensive lineman. Both of their running backs. They got two of their best three running backs. They got their best receiver. You know what I mean? So personally, I do feel like, and not only did they get their best receiver, so they got Elijah Surratt, who had 82 catches, about 1,100 yards, but then they went out in the portal and grabbed three separate receivers on top of that all have over 100 career receptions. So, and they're mainly like slot gadget guys. So they're gonna be there for Rourke. They're gonna be there if Rourke goes down for Jackson. You know what I mean? So they're gonna be there for like easy targets and things like that. So I really struggle with like us like bullying them in regards to a talent conversation. I think this just comes down to like who's been there before, and I think Indiana in this game makes plays to lose the game more so than we make a ton of plays to win it. That's off the strength of just having more talent, some of the players being comfortable at that level, etc. So, yeah, I got Indiana, but I got maybe for 2.5, 3 quarters. They're applying some pressure, and then it's kind of bully season after. So.
Yeah, I had this as a win. Looking at the schedule, and I know their passing attack should be pretty good. They got Rourke from Ohio, and then like Hood said, just kind of up and down the wide receiver course. Donovan McCulley, Miles Price, EJ Williams from I think he came from Clemson. In terms of pass catchers, this is as deep as probably anybody we're going to play this year.
Facts. Good call.
The top end talent, maybe not so much, but I definitely think that this is going to be a difficult receiver group for us to handle. So if Rourke's the real deal, we might see some struggles on that side of the ball. But looking at their defense, I wasn't particularly enthused. They got Pons from JMU, and I know he was really good there, but he's 5'9". And if you're listed at 5'9", as those of you may know, that means you're like 5'7.5".
Hey, I am 5'9".
I'm
so
talking
don't be
about
casting that shit my direction.
James Carpenter, CJ West, and Kamara, they have pieces. They have pieces on defense. I don't really love the depth there, and we're facing them, 6-7 games into the season. And there's just a whole different level of physicality when we're talking about taking half of James Madison's starting defense and trying to put it in the Big Ten. So for me, as long as the passing attack is kept relatively in check, I think this is a W.
Agreed.
Tugs?
I went.
W.
Dub.
All right. Moving on. Saturday, November 2nd is homecoming. It's USC. Shouts out to our buddy or my buddy Fight on Rusty. Your team's coming to town again this year for the first time since 2019. The concern I have for this game and the thing that our team needs to be mindful of is don't partake of too much Miller time, and whatever you do, do not eat any brisket that Lincoln Riley gives you. Provided we don't do that and we avoid the reverse fruit baskets that led to our sanctions in 1992. But let's be real here. Miller Moss has played one very good college football game, and it was in a bowl game that did not count. I mean, it counts, but if it's not a CFP game or even in an NY6 game, does it really matter? Probably not. I think Danton Lynn does a lot with the USC defense. USC is actually a sneaky team that I think could actually end up in Indianapolis for the conference championship game. That said, this SC coming to Seattle in November and winning a football game. The last time the SC came to Seattle in November and won a football game, they were the hottest team in the country. And had, granted, he has not had a great NFL career, but it was also against a largely broken Jake Browning at that point in terms of his shoulder and couldn't complete passes beyond 15 yards because of the injury. This is not that. I think we beat USC. I don't think this is USC's year to come to come to Seattle, Washington, and win a football game.
Hey, can somebody pull up USC's schedule real quick and just let me know, like maybe even like the 3 games they play before us?
Yep.
No.
Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers.
Okay, that's crazy work. And then
Turtle.
and then even before that, like they're when it comes to USC, like if you've heard me kind of mention anything, I do feel like they are as good as well, I'll say they are as capable of any team in the conference to win the conference or be in Indianapolis. The primary thing is going to be the opposite of Rutgers. Like, Rutgers has a cake schedule. These guys do not. I think if they had Rutgers' schedule, we'd be talking about USC differently. I think the reason why they lose this game at Washington is simply because of attrition. You know, I definitely fear, I'll just keep it a buck. Like, I definitely fear Deanton Lynn, at a place that can kind of hoard talent. And to be honest, USC has a bunch of USC has a bunch of like tweener talent in its front seven, and that's what kind of Deanton Lynn works best with. Like, I think the marriage of the Ohio State offense with Will Howard and Chip Kelly is one of the best like portal kind of matchups with coaching staffs. And then I think the front seven with USC and Deanton Lynn might be a close second in regards to like a coach that matches the personnel. So it's just going to really come down to attrition, in my opinion. Like, how healthy is Washington? How healthy is USC? How beat down are they? I got Washington winning, but off the strength of assuming that, USC's tough schedule is going to take a toll. But if USC is rolling at this point, that would mean a lot, and I definitely think if they're rolling, it would be an L. But I don't think they're going to make it through their initial part of their schedule, so I got a dub.
Yeah. To give context on that, USC to start the year, it's their first game is LSU, Utah State, then they're at Michigan, home to Wisconsin, at Minnesota, home to Penn State, at Maryland, home to Rutgers, and then at Washington. Basically, so at Maryland, home to Rutgers, at Washington in 3 weeks after a game against Penn State. Like, I think Penn State's going to give them some problems in the Coliseum. Like, if you talk about a tweener defense, then Penn State has the potential to body that defense. We were not the world's greatest running football team last year. And Dylan Johnson ran for 251 yards. Wow. They have, granted, that was Alex Grinch, and this is Danton Lynn, but they have not suddenly populated the defense with monsters in the middle.
Coleman's going to run wild.
Yeah, I think Coleman's going to have. This is a close game, but I think ultimately, advantage, and I honestly think that their best quarterback is probably their backup in Jaden Mayata. But I still don't know that UNLV transfer or Miller Moss comes to Washington in November. If Washington has any kind of winning record,
he's going to see one color, and it's purple.
Thanks.
White caps in the toilet bowls again.
And when's the last time they? At the end of the day, bro, like, I think these last 2 years have really changed what Washington fans understand about their program. You brought that element up. Like, there's so many people that I know that went to games last year, whether me bringing them or not, but and other people just coming to games that were like, holy shit, this environment is crazy. Like, look at the noise, so I think that element is back, man. And I think that element is is hard to like quantify how much a home field advantage is, but USC in 2018, I think is when was it
2016?
It was
2016 when we lost. That's a whole.
Because John Ross was open the whole game and we still lost.
The whole game.
Oh my god.
But at the end of the day, we really are gonna have everybody that we play when we're in a good position, 5-1, 5-2, 7-2, whatever. The home foot advantage is going to be very, very different versus these teams. And I just think that a lot of people aren't expecting what's about to come, bro. I think USC really pushes us. I think their offense pushes us. I think their defense gives our front seven problems with a lot of the versatility that they utilize up front in the Antolin system. They changed their whole defensive staff, and they arguably got some of the best guys in the country on defense. So we know these kids are going to be prepared, and they're also weeding out. They don't give a damn if you a 5-star, 4-star. They're weeding out the weak links. Like, this is a whole different USC program. You know what I'm saying? Like, in Lincoln rumors from spring, summer, and fall are that he's hands off on the defense right now. So he's not. And please do this, please. So it's not his culture on defense. So we might even see. I think we're going to see something completely different from USC. But I just don't think they're going to be healthy when they play us. So
where did Foreman go?
Corey Foreman, Fresno State.
Oh, washed.
But I mean, USC doesn't have linebackers though, so that's kind of where to really attack. They bolstered up edge, bolstered up D-line, bolstered up their secondary. They got the receivers. They got a good running back in JQ Marks.
Woody Marks. Yeah.
His name is Woody, huh? What's his real name, bro? It's some
yeah. Tugs, go ahead.
I think Coleman runs wild, and we sneak this one out.
Please, I need it.
I mean, this one feels like a 27-23 kind of game.
Yeah, I mean, looking at
the
roster, like they have the pieces. Like I said, like this team could absolutely go win but not just be in the Big Ten championship. Like, they could win a Big Ten championship.
They go win that shit.
The pieces are there. Like, if Miller Moss is the guy he showed in the bowl game, and if that wide receiver room is as advertised, because I mean, the depth there is it's a loaded room, and then that's not even mentioning Deuce Robinson.
Yep.
Right, because he's really more of a tight end. If there is a question on offense, it's the O-line.
Yep.
But they have some returning starters there, which is obviously important. And then, I mean, defensive side of the ball, like I said, they bolstered the D-line. They brought in a couple transfers. And then in the defensive backs, they got Jalen Smith coming back, and then they got Humphrey from UCLA, Nicholson from Mississippi State.
Yep. The corner. Yep.
And they got Kamari Ramsey coming in. So, I mean, look, the talent's there, but this game is not being played in Los Angeles, and I really think in the end that makes a difference.
We had a great summer, bro. Like, we have to have a shitty winter. So I think, can we please just have like terrible weather this game or something? Force them to run the ball all game. Force them to tackle all game.
It's November in Seattle.
Like, damn, come on. If we can have that, that'd be perfect. Just force them to. Because if it's a shootout, boy.
Well, here's the thing with that too. Like, Woody Marks, dog. Like, I love him. Baller.
Who next?
Running back is the position where you're most likely to have attrition.
Come on.
And the next guy is probably Quentin Joyner.
Who's okay.
He's all right. He had 20 carries last year. He's okay.
He had 20 carries last year. That's 20 carries he gave. He had 20 carries.
You see how big, like, and I just want to be honest. I'm going to be honest. When I was in LA at the USC game and I heard them announce before the game that who was the run? Marshawn Lloyd wasn't playing, I say game over. Game over. Like, if USC does not have a threat,
Jackson's gone too.
If USC doesn't have a threat of the run, their offense is done, bro. Like,
yeah, because the thing is, this O-line's good, not great.
Yeah.
Like, they have guys coming back, but this is not a top class offensive line like we were just talking about with Iowa. So if they're not able to run the ball and we can just send the house, I think that's trouble for them.
Agreed.
Yeah, we lost DJ due to some technical difficulties, and he did chime in and say that in the chat that this was the other game he was referring to when we were discussing Rutgers. He does think this one's a W. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a close football game, but I think that there's a lot that a good Washington wins this. Like anything above a. I think my overarching sentiment about this season is if the offensive line is average, we win 7 or 8 games. If the offensive line is above average, it gets to 8,
9 or 10,
maybe 10. If it's below average, we're probably more in the 6 to 7 range, and if we're significantly below average, it deteriorates from there. If we have an offensive line, I think that we can do enough to get Jonah Coleman and Cam Davis going in this game. And I honestly think this is also a game like, yes, they brought in some transfers to Easton Mascarenas. Arnold is a good player. This is also a game where that kind of short and intermediate passing game, like, hey, but how many times last year did we talk about slants and, and mesh and stuff across the middle? Let's just chuck it outside the numbers, 15 yards plus. This is the kind of game where it's like, you can sustain an offense doing that shit, and particularly with if you listen to our guy Roman on Locked On Huskies, Will hits his back foot in the drop or whatever. If it's a 3-step drop, it's a 5-step drop, it's a 7-step drop, or if he's in the shotgun, he hits his back foot and the ball's out. Again, how do you, the overarching question is like, okay, yeah, we have a question on the offensive line. How do you mitigate that? You get the ball out fast to guys that can make plays in space. We have those.
Yep.
But let's move along to a game that I think is actually going to be
loss.
I said it at the top. Yeah, this is the likeliest loss on our schedule.
This was the first game I circled.
Oh, what is it? Let me see.
We get the whiteout game.
Yeah, whiteout game, Beaver Stadium.
That can truly just ground the holy shit out of the football with a good defense. I think in one of the great miracles of the modern era, Drew Aller might even complete multiple long passes against us. But even that said, I don't think that they necessarily would shed us, but I do think Penn State wins by a score 10, maybe 30.
Man, shout out to 50 Cent, man. I don't believe you.
It's such a brutal place to play.
Yeah.
It's a brutal place to play before you have Katron Allen and Nick Singleton running the ball down your throat and Julian Fleming catching passes.
Don't do that.
Yeah, it's I don't want to say that Viga Ioane is on the offensive line because that's gonna sting a little bit, but he is.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks, John.
Bit. That one stings a lot of bit, bro.
Well, yeah. Sal Wormley. There's talent on the offensive line. The defense, the line, I think, is pretty good with Durant, Beeman, Ellies, Alonzo Ford. Edge rushers, I mean, yeah. They got... If it's not Ohio State and if it's not Michigan, this is going to be the best defensive line in the conference. And if this is the best defensive line in the conference, it's going to be because Dennis Sutton and Abdul Carter just wreck our shit.
You laughing. Man, watching DDS and Abdul Carter, they got like 4 linebackers they blitz, 2 that rotate. I'm like, bro, this is cheating.
Yeah, bro, listen, don't get me wrong. I like what we have on our team this year. I literally looked at the schedule and I said L.
So
brutal.
To piggyback off of you, bro, their defensive personnel, and this is what I look at. I look at what to attack. So it's weird because if I'm analyzing a team, I'm looking at I hate that I look through it through this lens, but I'm like, if I'm Washington, where am I attacking based on my strengths instead of just watching fucking teams? But you named interior defensive line players. Outside of Zane Durant, none of them are impactful. And Zane Durant's 280, 285.
Yeah, I mean, Durant's the best player here, but then it's like Is it
big bodies?
Hakeem Beeman? Is it
They're
Alonzo
all
Ford?
right.
I mean,
They're big. They're bigger bodies, but they're all right. I think if you're talking about if there's a strength on our offensive line, it's the interior.
yeah.
So if you're talking about if you're able to run on somebody or anything like that, I think we will have more running success on Penn State than we think. I think a lot's going to depend on who the right tackle is going to be. Or, I mean, I don't know where as a party starting right or left, but a lot's going to depend on who that matchup between that edge 2 and that tackle 2.
Dude,
Like,
their edge room is.
it's ridiculous, bro. I'm trying so hard, but I think they speed Will up. Will gets it out quick. I think they get a decent amount of turnovers. I think it's not going to be as hard to run on them as people think. You got an experienced quarterback on the road who has seen a ton of those types of environments. So I think the quarterback's going to be fine. Like I think the quarterback's going to get the offense fine. And I think one thing that's not like talked about enough is what is the impact of the fifth and sixth year players on this team who've seen this type of shit before. I'm struggling to see like players that have been through. I'm struggling to see players who have been through natty runs and 11-win seasons be like, "Oh, this is Penn State, bro. This is too much." Like I'm struggling to see that. When you've played in the CFP, I'm struggling to see that. So
I don't think it's the.
Go ahead.
I don't think it's the environment. I just think it's the matchup.
I think it's a bad matchup. They're going to squat on everything we're doing. They're going to load the box, be hella aggressive. They're going to squat on everything. So if we're not double moving or
And they can too because KJ Winston
reverse, that's about it. That's about it, though.
Now if KJ Winston is not playing, we have a different conversation.
But again, and I will reiterate, remember listeners of Sound the Siren, and remember anybody that comes to us from the College Huddle and our network. We do this a couple of different ways on Sound the Siren. We do a big season prediction at the beginning, and then each week we go in further depth on the game when we know a little bit more about what's happening. And so, again, if we get a little more information to the positive of our offensive line, that's going to sway things. If we get a little less, or if we get some signals that things aren't going so well, we're not going to be held to what we know now because we learn things by watching our team play.
I mean, I'll say this for Penn State. I love what they have in the cornerback room. If you look at their safeties, like we just said, you got KJ Winston, you got Wheatley, and then it's just a big old line of question marks.
I agree with that.
So that's a position. And for me, looking at the way their defense is constructed and the way they like to play the game, if they don't have that range in the defensive backfield, it's just a completely different picture. So that's one where I think attrition could play a big role at this point because this is mid-November. So if we win this, I have this picked as an L, but I think if we win this game, it's going to be because we're able to get into their defensive backfield.
Okay, could be a Quentin Moore, Kaliki Latu kind of game.
I agree. And was it Tom Moore as their defensive coordinator? So that does not help. I don't.
Well, and again, there's also the James Franklin history of what James Franklin does against teams that are comparably talented or relatively.
Please respect the best
talented
cheerleader in college football. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're out of pocket. I think that's Sharon Moore. He actually dropped tears, and then it might go to JF.
All right, but let's Tugs. Any thoughts on Penn State?
No, I
got a
L. I think that defense is just going to be too tough in that environment.
All right, let's move along to the following Friday, back home of the salute to service game against UCLA. This is one for me where, again, I have a concerning case where we might be intimidated by the moment and the opposition. In this case, being stunned into a sense of absolute awe 4 or 5 months later of what is, without question, the greatest media day opening statement by a head coach in the history of college football. And we all do remember what Deshaun Foster does to the Washington Huskies, right? Or is it just me that's old enough to remember what that was like when he was toting the rock for the light blue and gold? But in all seriousness, they lost. I mean, granted, I think that UCLA has a lot of promise, and I think he's going to do some good things there. I think the Eric Bieniemy hire at offensive coordinator was a good one. That said, I don't know in the college game of 2024 if the adding off Eric Bieniemy as your offensive coordinator is enough to compensate for the loss of Danton Lynn as your defensive coordinator. I don't think they have the pieces across the roster to really scare me. I think Ethan Garbers is competent-ish, but do they really have, and TJ Harden is a good running back, but do they really have enough pieces to put a balanced attack together to threaten the defense?
I'll answer that one. No. I mean, look, the receiver room, the receiver room is good.
Very good.
But you don't build a good offense with one position group. And outside of TJ Harden, who's going to carry the rock? Outside of Ethan Garbers, who's going to get the job that? First of all, you got to get the ball in those receivers' hands. And with all due respect to Ethan Garbers, I don't think he's that guy. Is he a decent Pac-12 quarterback? Sure.
Yes.
But we're talking about the Big Ten now, and we're talking about a completely different level of football that you're trying to play. Is Ethan Garbers that guy?
Mm-mm.
For me, when you ask that question, if the answer isn't immediately yes, I think really that says all that needs to be said. Their pass catchers are good. Their offensive line is not
trash.
Their defensive line I'm going to be nice, and I'm going to say it's dog water. You could use a different word starting with dog there. They lost every single. They lost their top 4 or 5 edge guys.
They lost everybody.
Obviously they lost our Husky King Latu, but they also lost the twins. They lost Carl Jones. I mean, the linebackers. They lost.
Still there.
Yeah, and he's gonna be a backup. If there is a strength on defense, their cornerbacks are okay.
But they got their best.
Is Westwood closer to family than Tuscaloosa?
Look, I like David. I like Jalen Davies. I like Jalen Davies. I like Devin Kirkwood.
Same.
So I like the cornerbacks. Every single other position on defense to me, at best. So I mean, how good was Brian Addison at Oregon last year?
He was good, bro. Brian Addison's arguably their best safety. He just quit on Oregon. Like he was like, man, I hate
that's my thing. Like, is he a fine player? Sure. He left his team 4 games into the season, and now you're asking a guy with 5 starts in his college career to go lead a defensive backfield that's playing behind the worst defensive line in the fucking conference. Arguably.
They got Jay Toya. Okay, yeah, I got it a dub, man. Easy dub too. I think more so about this situation with kind of doing some research is figuring out that Deshaun Foster's last year of playing was the same year that DP was born. So that kind of hurts my feelings. I remember watching him play in them ugly ass uniforms and kill us. So there's that. But yeah,
you know that was a time that I was in college, right?
Bro, I was
at the University of Washington.
That's crazy, bro. I wasn't a teenager yet, but I was cognizant of things.
You weren't a teenager yet, but you were cognizant of things, and I was in college. You were just making You are emphasizing that Tugs and I are the of this
Elder,
pod.
the Pliny Elder.
God.
Yeah, this is an easy dub. I'm definitely rooting for HBC UCLA, for sure. You know,
That's
they're
a
going
bang.
out.
That's a domer. That's a domer.
You like that? They're going out there and they're grabbing every brother they can. On that coaching staff. So I'm gonna support UCLA, but I just cannot support them this night. I don't know why Collins Achiamapong went there, but he should have went to the University of Washington if he really wanted to play some football. But yeah, I got nothing for UCLA, man. Like I really sat there during I told you my series I do with the Big Ten breakout players, and my priority is not to do transfer guys; it's to do incumbent starters or guys that have been on the roster and they're going to have their first opportunities, to make their marks. And I couldn't find anybody that was already on the roster that was going to contribute at a high level in the Big Ten. So this is definitely the worst roster in the Big Ten in my opinion. So if we lose this game, this is definitely some hot seat type vibes in my opinion.
Yeah, if you take out their wide receiver room, this is a bottom tier roster. They have talent there, but that's not a position that just wins you games by itself.
That's about it, man.
And then we have a bye.
And then we have a second bye. You see what I did there?
We would have a second bye after that season.
And then we have a team that, as I said earlier in our recording, on paper, one of the two best or two most talented rosters in the conference.
Man,
I will say, and I'm not hoping for this, but I will say that if Dylan Gabriel gets hurt,
Oh, they're fucked.
Yeah. I still like. I mean, Oregon. What I'm gonna say in large is that Oregon needs to prove to me that they can defend the pass, and until they do,
Oregon needs to prove to me that they can win the big game. Look,
yep.
Dan Lanning,
Yeah,
can get talent into the University of Oregon, right? He clearly has no problem shelling out Phil Knight's money. Right? Yeah, you'll give him an unlimited budget, he will get you talent. Dan Lanning, in his career, if you look at the important games that he's coached, how many of them are wins?
0.
No, it's not 0. But
they literally credit him for Utah at Oregon when Utah was like hurt, and Bo Nix on one leg, but
yeah, and I mean, look, the roster on paper, right? Dylan Gabriel, Jordan James, Noah Slippington. Oh, sorry, I mispronounced that. I mean Whittington.
That's the kicker's name, sir.
I mean, they got Evan Stewart, Tez Johnson, Trey. Look, on paper, this is a loss, and I circled this as a loss. The reason I circled this as a loss is not because I think this is the greatest football team of all time, not because I think they were rightfully anointed as Big Ten contenders. I circled this as a loss because it's in Autzen Stadium.
Yeah.
And I genuinely believe that this is a home game. This is pretty winnable. For me, looking at the defensive line, I don't think it's that great. Like, Jordan Birch was good last year. He was good. He's not an All-American.
Is he the Cougars mascot or a football player?
I mean,
I'm sorry, you said Jordan Butch, so...
Yeah, sorry. We're several drinks too. In case we couldn't tell, I've transitioned.
We're good.
They got Ware Hudson, and then we got Derek Harmon from Michigan State. We don't have any experience playing against Michigan State, so I have no idea what that's going to be like. Oh, wait. The linebacker room's okay. They got Jacobs from Iowa, who's coming off a big... If you want to pick a position where you don't want a guy to lose his lateral movement and tear his ACL.
Yes,
Probably linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's a good player for Iowa. We'll see how he recovers. Jeffrey, was it Bassa? Bassa, good player. Is he?
They don't even like him. He's like Eddie.
Is he the first team all-conference player like people seem to think he is?
Absolutely not.
No.
Oregon fans don't even like Jeffrey Bassa.
Cornerbacks.
That's their.
They got. Yeah, I mean, they got Florence, they got Barr, they got Dante Manning, they have Brandon Johnson, Kim Alexander. Like, if you want to pick out a position where they've done a good job, they got talent there. Safeties, though, is a different story because you have Tysheem Johnson, who was kind of a experienced starter last year, and if Kobe Savage isn't that guy, I don't know who they turn to here. Like
Peyton Woodward, bro.
Yeah, but I mean,
who's okay?
that was a very much like late in the class. Like, we need to get a guy. Let's go grab this Alabama commit type guy. Like,
it was desperation for sure.
Because they have the resources. We know that. Looking at this roster, can they contend for the Big Ten? Absolutely. Yeah, they have the pieces. They have the talent. Until Dan Lanning proves to me that he can win the big game, I'm not going to just pencil them in as a top 14 year in, year out.
Yep.
And realistically, I think if this game was not being played in Autzen Stadium, I think if you look at that defensive backfield beyond the corners, if they're going to go 5 deep, who are they going to play? And if we're going to run it up the middle, yeah, their edges are good. I don't think their interior defensive line is that good. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. They're perfectly capable of winning 10 games. They're perfectly capable of winning 12 games. This is not the assured top-end elite team that everybody seems to think it is. And if Dylan Gabriel isn't able to reproduce what Bo Nix did last year in terms of the checkdowns,
he's got a better deep ball than Bo.
Yeah, no, he throws a pretty ball. I'll give him that. If Dylan Gabriel isn't able to be the guy that they think he is, they very well could be an 8-9 win team, and I think people don't really realize that.
And if he gets hurt,
I mean,
if he gets hurt, we got Dante Moore, and with all due respect to Dante Moore, look, he's got talent, undeniably, but he hasn't put it all together yet. And if you're asking him to be the guy,
PTSD.
Yeah, if you're asking him to be the guy who brings a team to the CFP, I don't think he's there yet. No. I just don't.
Yeah, I think their only hindrance here is their coaching staff. I think when you talk top to bottom in regards to the talent on any of these teams in the country, I think Oregon is easily top 2, top 3.
Yep.
I think they have more talent than Ohio State. I think Ohio State's talent is just more experience. Mm-hmm. I think the main thing here with Oregon is, is ultimately their experience. You rolled out a decent amount of true freshmen last year. You're probably going to roll out a few true freshmen this year. So that's a team full of, 1 through 4 year players. So they're and they've never played in any big games. So I'm kind of curious, like how they respond to Dan Lanning's his process, because obviously at the highest level he hasn't won, and to be honest, like I'm not one of the people that consider any Utah victory a big win.
Except 2016, that team was good.
I have a lot of respect for Utah, but there's nothing about Utah that I've ever feared was
been scared of, right? Yeah, it's a different.
Yeah, it was more so like you're going into either their environment or if they're coming into yours. You always mention things like
Utah was the Iowa of the Pac-12.
Yeah, I mean, Rice. Dude, all the no one wants to play in Rice Eccles. You can say that
exactly.
Well, we do because we're like.
Us in Oregon
we have 2 losses against them all the time, and they were both.
Us in Oregon had 0 problems with dealing with the Utah problem. It's so funny how people get that misconstrued, but I do feel like there's a significant talent gap here. Not only a talent gap, but a continuity gap. You keep all your staff, etc. Dylan Gabriel fits into Will Stein's system perfectly. I think the primary thing is while we gave Bo a lot of shit for short intermediate throws, that's where his strengths were. I think Dylan actually has issues with that. I think Dylan actually has issues staying consistent with who he's supposed to get the ball to, the why he's supposed to get the ball to that guy. I think there's going to be a little bit more off script stuff that you kind of saw in 2022 with Will Stein and Bo Nix. That didn't lead to as successful as a season as 2023. So I definitely think Dylan Gabriel is a step down in quarterback performance. But I don't think there's any. This is a game like I think the Iowa game. You have their defense and their home foot advantage. I think no matter what you decide to pick, I think Oregon has the advantage. Whether it's home field, whether it's offensive line, defensive line, corners, receivers, whatever the case may be, there's nowhere where you can look at and you're like, Washington has a big enough advantage to exploit, to be able to take advantage of, other than any given Saturday. So I definitely feel like, Oregon is definitely going to snag this one. Primary reason being talent, secondary reason being home field advantage. But Dan's got to prove it at the end of the day. Like Washington won't be a quote unquote big game. You know what I mean? If we have a bunch, 3-4 losses at this point, but so it's not something that he's going to be, superly stressed or overly worried about. But yeah, I think this is I don't know what the score is going to look like, but I think this may be one of the more ugly losses in the season, to be honest with you. So.
Yeah, and I mean, my thing with Dan Lanning is, look, go ahead, win the big game, and I'll tip my cap. I'm just waiting for that day to come.
Yep. I think we go down there and win, because why the fuck not?
Come on, I love that.
Yep.
I don't think their defense is. I mean, I don't know. It wasn't great. It's not great. So yeah, I don't know. I think we're gonna go down and win.
I think
they gotta prove it, bro.
Yeah.
Yep. Prove it. Do it
exactly.
and prove it, and I'll believe it. Also, I mean, it greatly depends. Like somebody asked me, I think Key actually asked me a couple weeks ago. It's like, if Oregon beats Washington this year, does that count as a big win for Dan Lanning? I'm like, it depends on who Washington is this year.
It depends on who Washington is. Exactly.
If Washington is 9-2, and they win that, and Oregon wins that game, yes, it's a big win. If Washington is 7-4 and they win that game, no. It's relative. It's all about the quality. It's both like a proactive and then retrospective look at the team you played about whether it's a big win or not.
Yeah, it's just about scale.
Yeah.
Ultimately, for as long as we're doing this podcast, I'm not going to predict Oregon to beat Washington.
No.
Oh damn! I probably gotta adopt that for sure.
I'm not going to do it.
Too late. Too late.
Nah, I gotta adopt that.
I'm not going to do it. I think to me this one is you guys remember 2019?
Yeah,
we had a game in hand and gave it away.
I agree.
We felt like we'd given a game away the year before, and like we were in control, and then we absolutely shit the bed thanks to Bob Gregory, linebacker coaching, and putting Kyler Manu on the field.
Please don't say that name. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that I think this is their version of that this year, and I think that they're going to feel comfortable. Actually, somewhat like they did a couple of years ago, and then all of a sudden, here comes Washington again. And I think the funniest part about it is what ends up leading to that comeback is I think we're going to roll the dice not once but twice on 4th down and keep drives alive.
Ooh.
On passes in the flat to tight ends or running backs.
The Bo Nix check down coming back to bite them.
and what didn't work for them in Husky Stadium last year is gonna work for us. And Jonah Coleman and Cam Davis are going to come through. I'm going to just call him Jonah Davis or Cam Coleman going forward. But I think that's going to come through, and I think we sneak out of there. And I think the Ducks' misery with the University of Washington continues for another season. And it may cause Phil Knight to have an aneurysm because it may drop them to potentially a second or if not third loss on the year. So, yeah.
Man, they gotta really prove it, man. Like our game is gonna mean a lot more to them than it's gonna mean to us. Because you gotta think about the magnitude of the games that we've played the last 3 times. They've actually meant something, and I think when we play this year, I don't think the game is gonna mean as much outside of. And I think at this point in the season, whether Oregon wins or loses, they'll have take care, big dog. They'll most likely have an inside shot to to Indianapolis. But I think there's gonna be a lot of not in a negative sense for Washington, some nonchalance, but all the pressure's on you, bro, to prove that you guys can beat us. And I think regardless of what our record is, I think it's going to be considered a big game, for him, only because it's a big hurdle for him. It's a rivalry hurdle for him. For Lanning. It's odd because I actually do like Lanning. And I don't feel like he's made coaching decisions in our games that have negatively impacted the team. I think they just didn't execute, when they had opportunity.
I agree. Yeah.
When you feel like you have a more talented team, you damn right I'm gonna go for it on 4th down. What the hell?
I like that about him, to be honest. And I don't mean I like that because it's benefited us. It's like I want a coach that does that.
You just got out coached in those moments, bro. And if you look at the Dom Hampton PBU at the end of the half, bro, those literally come down to X's and O's and experience and just being there before. And you guys had a 4th-year player, 5th-year player in Bo Nix that had been there before and was still making mistakes in the clutch. So that just is, you can tell that's part of them. If you have a bunch of people, a bunch of players, especially Bo Nix, who showed composure all year, if you have Bo Nix, getting down in the clutch moments and he's kind of uptight, that should tell you that there's not a tangible process for that. That's just go out there and play football, go execute. There's no mental side of that. So I do feel like they're going to be relying on Dylan Gabriel's personal experience, personal big moments to be able to overcome their own hurdle. So it's going to be up to Dan Lanning and staff, man. Can they ride it? And what if they're in a position where they got to win that game to go to Indianapolis, where they didn't have the season that they wanted? How does that team respond? What happens if they lose? If they have some attrition. One thing I was really kind of considering was just in analyzing all the Big Ten rosters was, from team 3, obviously excluding Oregon and Ohio State, from team 3 to 8 to 10, I feel like if you lose 3 to 5 players, it changes your season. Oregon, if you have the right 3 players miss the season or can't participate in the season, their whole season's different too. So I think there's a lot of variables this year that can contribute. Obviously, this is an L, just mainly because of the home field advantage, and the timing of it. But
yeah. The last thing I'll say about this one, and I think we'll skip the individual accolades or preseason prognostications of accolades, and we'll put that on with our week 1 episode next week.
Hey, we're only 2 hours in, bro. We got time.
3. Yeah, 2.5. We're rapidly approaching Dennis Cochran and tech territory. But what I will say, and the one compliment that I will pay to our feathered friends is, I will say, if you could trade units, and I think I said this in a space, I think I said this on another podcast, you give Washington Oregon's offensive line. Washington's a playoff team.
Yep.
Right now, like this year, like full stop. Like,
I mean, Josh Connerly should be a Husky, but that's a different conversation.
Thanks again, Jimmy and John Dunn. Like I said, I won't predict Oregon to ever beat Washington, so I think this is a win and we get it done. We will be back next week, potentially with that new segment of Ask DP, or we'll see if we can get DP on a couple times this year. But we will be back next week with an actual game preview and even further information about Washington versus Weber State. Leading into Saturday, the 31st at Husky Stadium. We've gotten to game week, folks. Thank you for listening. Thanks for bearing with us. Go Dogs. Again, thanks, and have a great weekend.
Yes, sir. Go Dogs, man.
DP, great to have you back, bud.
He said,
and Hood, as
woof.
always, it's a pleasure.
Annual appearance.
He said, woof.
All right. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs, man.